Thank you for joining me for Boon Companion, Content Strategist to Sidekick. Genevieve did a great introduction to let you know my back history. I started working at the University of Florida in 2001. I came from a small company that sold rechargeable batteries, and I was an intern who kind of got assigned to build the website. And I parlayed that into getting a job at the University of Florida. And I was bright-eyed and eager when I took that job. I came in and I was like, this is going to be fantastic. I'm going to put stuff up on these websites. People are going to find it useful. It's going to be fantastic. There's going to be content from all sorts of people. This will be great. This is me today in 2018. I spend a large amount of my time in a dark room, and I'm very grumpy, and people come by and I tell them no all the time. So that really brings me to the idea of sagas. When I think of Star Wars, I think of Star Wars as being a saga. And sagas is a good word to use for our institutions. If you were at the roundtable discussion that we had yesterday, Malik mentioned the fact that, you know, when we talk about our institutions are hundreds of years old. They have a very storied history. They have a lot of legacy that's behind them. And that's the same for our websites that are part of these organizations. We have a ton of content that's on them that came from all sorts of different places. A very similar saga, I think, is like Lord of the Rings. And Lord of the Rings, I think, is an apt analogy for what our organizations are like. We have a lot of different kingdoms and a lot of different people with different motives for what they're doing, and they all have to interact with each other in this grand kind of chess game. Those original websites that I built really ended up being a lot of holding kind of material, because I didn't really think of content strategy when I started. I was just a person who was told to put things on the website. And I put everything on the website. Everything on the website. That's a lot of content debt too to have to deal with over time. And so I started to grow into that role and see how can I fix that. Our websites almost became like the Silmarillion. So a lot of this conversation is going to be about J.R.R. Tolkien. So how many of you are familiar with Lord of the Rings? A few that are not. So I will describe it, because I don't use analogies that don't have any relevance. So J.R.R. Tolkien wrote this grand saga called Lord of the Rings that is a story about a group of adventurers who go to destroy this great object of magical power that could be used to take over the world. And it's this story about those adventures. The Silmarillion is an earlier book that he wrote that is full of nothing but genealogies, long histories of different heroes doing things. It reads very rote. It's very academic. And that's what a lot of our websites are like. So that brings me to the idea of governance. At the first time when I was building those first websites, I was like the single person. I made those decisions about what would be on the website. Now I'm starting to work on decentralized systems, and we have more people that make those decisions. And now we work in a WordPress CMS where we've got this many people who are making decisions about what goes on their website. I kind of feel like this sometimes. Bilbo, at one point in the book, describes the feeling that he has as feeling thin when he has to take all this responsibility, all this power. He feels sort of stretched, like butter scraped over too much bread. And I think a lot of people here probably have that same thing. How many of you feel like you're overworked in the kind of work that you do? A handful of people. There's some people, congratulations that you found that work-life balance. I give you a lot of applause for that. A lot of you probably feel like this when people come to talk to you and want them just to go away immediately. So taking that idea, that tired trope that content is king, a lot of people say that and say that content is the most important thing. We've already started now to think about the fact that context is more important from that. And context is queen. How do we deliver that content to a person at the right time, in the right method, for them to accomplish what they want to do? That concept of delivering that content is similar to the Ring of Power that's in the Lord of the Rings. So the Ring of Power is this magical item that grants the owner invisibility, but it also allows him to control the minds of other people and get them to what they want to do. So that is what we're wanting to do with our content, right? We're wanting to influence people. We want them to be able to be empowered to make the changes that they want to do to accomplish their tasks. So think of all those different content authors as you're giving them a ring of power when you give them their website to allow them to put that content on and to make those kind of decisions. At UF Health, that means we've got about 700 websites, and we've got 1,600 different content authors who make that content. And I often, in a lot of discussions at work, I'll say, you know, those people only have 0.25 of their FTE designed to the website to determine content. And then my web director looks at me and says, do you seriously think they have 0.25 FTE devoted to working on the website? And I said, no, you're right. It's 0.005% of their FTE devoted to the website. Last year, I did a presentation where I was talking about this idea of how we would do this, and that was the germ for this discussion. And a person in the audience asked me, hey, you're saying you want to put that power in their hand, but why should I have to do, basically what they were saying was, if it takes me 10 minutes in an email to explain to someone how to do a particular thing, and I know I can just log in and do it in 10 seconds, why wouldn't I take the time to do it in those 10 seconds and not even go through that person? And I've been really thinking about that over time, and that's a way that we'll suddenly start feeling thin. Yes, it might only take us 10 seconds to do it, but imagine if I'm doing that for all 700 of those websites and all 1,600 of those people. If I start doing that now, I'm going to start feeling thin. Eventually, I'm going to burn out, and I'm not going to want to do any of it anymore. So what I would like us to think about is the idea of us not being the hero. So this is something that, coming out of an army of one, it was very hard for me to take that concept because I was the only person who was in charge of the website. Oftentimes, no other stakeholder was very much really interested in what I was doing on the website at the beginning. My first job was at Student Financial Affairs. They were primarily interested in what their legal requirements were for state and federal regulations and putting that in the print document. They just wanted a one-on-one transfer to what it was on the website. And it didn't matter if it was structured in a way that worked for students. When I transferred from there and I started working at the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, originally they only wanted me to handle the dean's website. There are 36 departments in there that didn't have full-time web people. And eventually I had changed that position to be the person who managed all of those websites too. Now I'm in a system which is even bigger than that. And if I continue to be in that same role where I think that I have to take on all of it, I'm going to burn out. I don't want to be Frodo. I don't want to be Bilbo. I don't want to do that burnout. So I suggest a new strategy. And that's, if you're working in content and you're that person at the top that makes those decisions, you need to be more like Sam Gamgee. So Sam Gamgee is Frodo's best friend. He is the son of the gardener that manages the house that he lives in. And he agrees to go with him on this journey, not because he has to, but because he has a sense of duty and he loves Frodo. And he decides, I will go with him to support him on his journey. He is not the person who has to carry the ring, but he is the person that helps him from the side, almost like a sidekick. And I use the word sidekick. The sidekick name is a little, it doesn't quite fit it because it feels like it's a diminutive, but oftentimes the sidekick is a companion to the hero that helps them accomplish those quests that they go out to do. In this case, Sam Gamgee does that in 4 ways. He supports Frodo, he nurtures Frodo, he counsels Frodo, and he leads Frodo. So let's talk a little bit about what that kind of support looks like. The first thing that we do is we make sure that everything that we have in our WordPress theme is well documented for the people that are using our system. We have a dedicated website on our on our site that goes through how to do it. We create some white papers for new functions when we put them together. And we routinely go back to that document. We ask for feedback from our content contributors. Does this content make sense? Do we need to rewrite it? We really look at that and make sure that we're keeping that up to date for them. Secondly, we do a lot of training in our organization. So we do have a person in our 12-person web team whose primary focus is training for our system. She trains them on the concept of our theme, walks them through every of the aspects of the theme, and shows them what they'll have an ability to do from a role perspective and what's limited to our team, our web services team of super admins that we can manage on their site. That person conducts training both as one-on-one sessions. She does weekly group trainings that anyone's welcome to come to. She also will go out to their organizations and host trainings at their facilities as well. Third, there's a list of those. We also make sure that in those trainings, sometimes we do a lot of cross-training. So there's a couple of products that we have that the front-end developers are much more involved with, and they'll team up with our training developer to go out and help them in those particular instances where they need both of them in the room. And that's a really valuable feedback to our front-end developers as well, because they get feedback from our users in those meetings to see how we can improve our product. We also do a monthly newsletter that's put out from our web services office. That newsletter outlines changes that we've made to our WordPress themes. We outline upcoming projects that we're working on so we can give them some status updates and get them thinking about what they want to do as their next step. We put that out once a month, and we also include in there some survey data as well, so we can try and get some more feedback from them on our systems as well. Fourth, we have a biannual users meeting that we have in our organization. So if you were at Shelley Keith's workshop at the beginning, she talked about the importance of recognizing users that do a fantastic job. So our users meeting is kind of broken up. It's like a 3-hour session where the first hour and a half, the web services team does some broad overview material for individuals. We'll talk about content strategy. We'll talk about new products that we're having coming out and do some showcases for them so we can get some feedback. But the last half of our session is normally geared towards individuals in our system who have been doing a fantastic job. For instance, the last one that we had, we used MailPoet as a back-end piece for building newsletters in our system. So we had someone come in from the development office who showed how they're using it and using it effectively. And then the second one I will showcase at the end because they're my favorite user of all time, and this is my time to show off recognition for them. Support, we also do brown bag sessions. So we'll have little brown bag lunches. This is primarily done from a social media content strategy at this time, but it's something that we've discussed about rotating out to our larger system as well. And lastly, we give support through our email system. Now, our IT department does almost everything through LandDesk. Our web services team has studiously avoided putting things into LandDesk because it is not very easy and it's not very intuitive. So we have a direct support email at the bottom of every one of our WordPress sites. We have our contact webmaster. It goes directly to us. It does not go to the admin of that website. It comes to us so we can triage it and decide, is it a programming issue that our web services team needs to handle, or is it a content issue for that particular site? And then if it's a content issue, our small content team, which is myself, and we have one content coordinator and then that trainer who also does content work. We triage it between us and decide which one of us is the best person to handle it. And so when that email comes in, we use Slack on the back end, and one of us will mark it and say, this is something I'm taking on, so we know, so we avoid those awkward times where maybe two of us would write back to the same person at the same time. Not that we never said the exact same thing, but that's very weird for a customer to get 2 emails from people at the same time. Last year, that meant 4,700 support emails that we got. Those were 1,000 of them were probably content oriented specifically for our hospital website, and the other 4,700 were across the other 1,600 people. And 1,000 of those, we got some random contact webmaster kind of things in there as well. And there's the information. And our last resort is if we can't handle it through Slack. And if it's something that we can handle right away, we do it in Slack. But if not, then it goes into Asana as a longer task item for us to do. And then if it's something larger than that, then I'll schedule a real meeting with the individual so we can talk about their current issues with their site. Secondly, Sam Gamgee nurtures. So how does he nurture? Well, we develop style guides for our individuals to talk about what kind of content that they could put up on their site, trying to make sure that if they're going to add an infographic or a photo, they're following our branding standards for UF Health. Building out an asset library. We haven't done a lot of this in the past because we've had almost all of our development is done in-house in our office, so we've never built it out in a way to share it with other organizations outside. But in the past couple of months, the enterprise software engineering group in our office has approached us about building something larger than this. They finally see the value in taking their applications and having them match the rest of our web presence, so we're starting to work on that as well. Communicating best practices and making sure that we're keeping them up to date on where they should be and what direction we want them to go. And lastly, part of that nurturing is we also have a blog on our website. That blog helps to feed our MailPoet newsletter, but it also allows us to talk about industry trends. It allows us to do some showcasing of individual projects that have gone very well that the users have generated that didn't come directly from us. That's very important from that recognition standpoint. We want to take that time to really show that we're appreciating what they're doing with our system, not just that we're dictating to them how they should use it. And then we also take the opportunity to find webinars that we can invite the larger community to, not just UF Health, but the entire University of Florida campus community when these come up. Third, Sam Ganji takes the time to counsel individuals. So from a counseling perspective, testing is very important. So we've made sure that we have a dedicated person in our office who is responsible for doing user testing. Thank you, Robin. So the user testing group, it does both online testing with individuals who come in to look at our products. We also do in-house informal guerrilla testing sessions that we do within the hospital. We have a very big system that has multiple different locations. So not only do we do it on our Gainesville campus, but we try and do it at some of our external campus locations as well. We do that both as a primary thing on our primary hospital site, but we also do it as a service for each one of these individual departments. So if someone came to us and said that there was an item that they wanted to test, we'd sit down with them, figure out the best method for doing so, and then build that out for them. We also do comprehensive reviews of their site, and this is probably the place that my content team probably gets the most involved. So if an individual unit came to us and said that we have a problem with our website right now, and we're not quite getting the conversions that we want, or people aren't finding the information we need, we'll come back in at that point and do a comprehensive review with them at that next level. So that normally begins with a heuristic review of their website, where we look at primary issues that they might have with spelling and navigation issues, all the way up to information architecture issues. And at that point, we give them two options. We typically begin by creating a report for them that outlines each one of those. The report not only talks about what the issue is, but we talk to them about how and why it's an issue and why they need to address it. We can either then sit down with them to make the changes, or we can hand them a report. And if we hand them a report, we have them go out and do the changes on their own. We'll come back afterwards and review it and see if they did it correctly. But that's a better way from a learning perspective to make sure that they have actually absorbed what we're trying to teach them and are implementing it on their own versus us sitting side by side with them while they're doing it. Well, sometimes individuals in our system get too tied up for doing that kind of work. They kind of get that blank vacant stare, especially if they're 0.005. That's the point that we really then have to kind of step in and then say, okay, we need to go a little bit farther than where we were. And that's the point where we jump in and start to try and lead their thing. So if you remember in Lord of the Rings, there's that point after they have tried to get into Mordor several different times. Frodo is stung by the giant spider Shelob, and it seems like their quest is going to completely fail. And it's at that point that Sam finally picks up the ring. He picks up the burden and says, I'll carry this, and I will complete the mission. He rescues Frodo from the spider. He rescues Frodo from the orcs, and he leads them into Mordor to get them to the ring. That's a moment of last resort. That's where we don't want to be doing that for everybody, but we're always available to be able to do that carrying of the large load near the end when they really need that help and that assistance. In that role as leading, we have to take that responsibility of teaching. We're starting to build our own content strategy group in our system for doing more content strategy testing. Again, if you were at Shelley's presentation, while she was at the University of Mary Washington, she built an entire training regimen that she did for all of their content trainers. That's something that we're looking at implementing as well in our system, because I think that's that next step. We finally, after a few years, gotten to the point where our people are now thinking about their websites from that perspective. Secondly, you take the time to build. That's where we come in, and if they don't think they could do the heavy lifting with the site and they don't understand what we're doing from a concept, that's where we'll come in and actually start constructing it for them. And after we build it, we'll walk them through and talk to them why we made the decisions that we did. This slide, I don't know why that was there. So what are some of the results that we've been seeing from this? It's often very hard to take an organization and shift it, especially an institution the size of the ones that we work at. It's been about 7 years now that we've been working on this at the University of Florida in our health system. In the last couple of years, we've finally seen this starting to bear fruit. We've continuously talked to the individual departments about the needs for having more writing resources that are specifically web focused in their writing style and in their content. Our marketing department has now hired a couple of individuals who are specifically there for writing content for the web. We've also had individual departments that have started to talk to us about hiring not full-time staff at this point. They're still kind of just dipping their feet into it, but we're slowly moving into that direction. And that brings me to then my favorite person. And I am going super fast, so we're going to be open to a lot of questions, or you'll get to go to lunch early. Megan Meyer and Devin Freed, they're two people who work in our Clinical Translational and Science Institute, which is the group that's responsible for taking any research that's done and taking it and finding the business applications and going out and finding the patents for those things to become actual products. Their website has a section that was designed for the researchers to go and start building out that process and how they do things. And on the left, even though we can't see it right here at this size, was their original page for research services. You can see there's like 5 paragraphs here at the beginning talking about the goal of the UF Clinical and Translational Science Institute is to provide research services and blah, 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 blah. And maybe 2 or 3 screens down, they had the buttons for what people actually wanted to do on the page. After they were done, they reduced those 5 paragraphs to that one sentence. The UF Clinical and Translational Science Institute Service Center provides a range of services and resources to investigators performing translational research across campus. Here are the buttons. And the buttons go straight to where they want to go. This was another page on their site. On the side was a table of all of the different departments on campus that you would want to go to for information on how you were to do this, a brief description of each one of them, and then the contact numbers. On the right, what they reduced that to after they were done with it. Much more clean, much broader white space using color. I know you're crying. I see that. I was crying too. I was crying a lot. And I thought I had a correct slide here, but I don't. So I looked at this and I thought, oh my God, they built Minas Tirith. They built the giant shining city on the hill. And it's perfect. And even better, I didn't build it. I didn't build it at all. The only support that they had in doing that work from our office directly was in styling those CSS buttons on the page for their links on that section, which we were then able to parlay to add to our theme. There's a number of different departments that are now asking us if they can use that same little button code. What did we do on the back end? Well, we did this. We supported, we nurtured, we counseled, and we led. We spoke to all those departments for 7 years, and then Devin and Megan took what we talked to for heart and did it on their own. And this is really the direction we need to go. Now, Frodo and Sam's journey is only one way that this could go. If you remember, Merry and Pippin go through a very similar journey. And I'm not going to keep going with my tortured Lord of the Rings analogy here. But what you want to do is you want to find that way that works for you and works for your organization. What can you do at this time to help develop? You want to find ways that you can grow the system and find that opportunity that you can grow into those spaces that need to be filled. What we're wanting to do is we're wanting to sow the seeds for our future generations. What we want to do is we want to be able to build a system that can grow with everybody and get us to where we want to go. Now, that means sometimes we're going to fail because if we're not directly touching all those sites, there's going to be a lot of sites. And believe me, at the University of Florida Health, we have a lot of sites that from a navigational structure, they're a nightmare. They're way too big. For better or worse, at the beginning, we gave them the option of building mega menus on their websites, and people took advantage of building mega menus. A lot of mega menus. So there is a lot of work that we need to do on that. But 7 years later, we have a number of content creators who've come back to us who've said, you know, maybe there's too much content on our website. And I've gone, really? Really? I did not notice. I'd be happy to help you with that. And that's been, yeah, can you believe it? And I've been really happy with where we're going and the direction we're going. Of course, Gutenberg's probably going to throw a wrench in that, but c'est la vie. So what we want to do is we want to be able to serve the future. Where our role now is in the role of mentor. We're not the hero. We're the person on the back end who helps from the sidelines. We're trying to help our users to be the people to move that legacy forward and to keep the saga moving forward. I ended 15 minutes early. Oh my God. So,
impressed.
Well, so I'm going to leave this open for questions then, because we've got plenty of time for questions. So you had your hand up, sir.
Yeah, so I love the analogy in like Joseph Campbell's version, the sidekick or the supporter often dies or suffers some. I know Sam ends up living peacefully in the Shire and has kids and whatever, but how do you balance that sort of self-sacrifice that's in that sidekick with also still promoting your department and team and still kind of, it's great to celebrate your users, but you also need to celebrate your successes so you can kind of.
There is a balance that needs to happen there. Oh, yes, I'll ask that question. So for the online people, the question was, in Joseph Campbell's story about the hero's journey, the individual who is the sidekick often dies or suffers some terrible malady in helping the hero fulfill his quest, and that Sam is an anomaly in that role because he manages to survive and prospers as a result of what he's done. And how do you balance that between celebrating the successes of your users and celebrating the successes of your web team? So there you go. Oh, wow, that got louder. I don't think I needed it. That's an excellent point. You do have to balance the two of them. And in this analogy, I'm really focusing on Sam. And you're right. Sam was able to kind of sidestep the rest of how sidekicks go. That's why we break it down the way that we do, where we do highlight that from that perspective in doing those web user meetings and break it down to show what we're doing at the same time. The newsletter and that material is the way that we directly put that content out for people to see what our successes are. So we tout the horn of our successes from web services through there, and then through strategic meetings that we have with stakeholders outside of that user group. So that's how we balance it. Next. Oh dear. Yes.
So I'm really interested in the newsletter idea. How do you manage, because we've got our user group of administrators, authors, editors in WordPress. How do you translate that in a realistic fashion to newsletter distribution list to communicate to them in a way that's meaningful to them?
Okay, so anybody who touches any of our WordPress systems as an admin is directly added to our MailPoet listserv. So every one of them gets that email from us. We typically break it into sections. So there's a section at the beginning that comes from the training coordinator that talks about what are the upcoming changes that we made there that they need to know from a day-to-day basis for maintaining our theme. And then we get into the more esoteric stuff after that, where I come in and talk about what's the importance of SEO or a different thing. We typically have an editorial calendar that's about a month out in advance. So everybody on the web team will talk about what our priorities are of what we want to put in the newsletter. We'll assign an individual in the group to writing that particular piece, because at the beginning, we initially did this not as a newsletter, we just did it as the blog. And when you're talking with 12 different people who are in the system, it didn't work at the beginning. What we set up as a system there was that everybody was required to write a blog post for a year in a rotating system. We had 10 people in our office, so it rotated like this. For some of us, it was very easy to write for it. And for some of us on the programming side, it was like pulling teeth for them. They were like, no, I don't want to do this. And once our work started to pile up, it didn't become as much of a priority. So it kind of went to the side burner. The newsletter has been a much more effective tool for that. Specifically, the content team has taken on a lot of the writing for material that's in there, as well as the training coordinator. So we'll typically get notes from the programmers and sometimes write content for them and just walk it through them and make sure that they approve what we've put into place. the feedback that we've gotten from the newsletter also then feeds into what we do at those web user meetings that we do once a year. We get feedback from them about what they'd like to see us do more of. So the big focus that we got this year was on content. There's a lot of them who very much want to hear more about content strategy outside of just what we've been giving them as bare bones material. And so that's why we're now spinning up our training curriculum for that. We're probably going to dovetail it, I think, directly with, well, we've got 3 things on the horizon. We've got that, we've got Gutenberg, and we're just in the process of redesigning our 7-year-old WordPress theme. So all 3 of those things are going to come to fruition at the exact same time. So I'm super excited by it. So it's going to be awesome.
Heck of an opportunity you got there.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Yes.
More insight into what your training curriculum is going to look like, because I know we just started doing trainings on how to use WordPress, but I'm curious how we can expand it, like maybe to SEO. Or something like that.
So our current training is just really on the theme and just some basic accessibility practices. Our new training curriculum is going to be based almost entirely on what Shelley Keith has put together. Yes, I was going to say that. She's got it available for free, so you can connect with her afterwards, and she'll help you hook you up.
Perfect, thanks.
Yes, sir.
I recently switched colleges to the School of Law. How do you convince administrators, especially administrators with a legal background who are used to hundreds of pages of legal documents, on the importance of brevity and like how to cut down their content?
And this is why we
Like, any
drink.
tips?
Yeah. That is an extraordinarily difficult thing to do. Yes. And I think if we all had answers for it, we wouldn't be drinking. I think a lot of organizations pull, I see this at a lot of schools where they'll build layers onto their sites, where at the beginning there is a section that is a broad overview before they get into those pages that are just miles and miles of dense copy. And you build something at the top that's specifically for the audience, and if you have to give the faculty member that, it's a trade-off, but you do it at a lower level and not as a primary item farther down. I think what you need is just a few of these success cases like this. I don't have data from them other than all of their support calls for how to use that CTSI page disappeared after they made the change. And so their lives are a lot easier now. But if you've got real statistics on that, at our level, primarily day to day, I do content for the hospital system. So for a lot of our service lines, there's a lot of trade-off in what the content is between myself and the marketing team and working to find that right balance between business goals and user goals. Where I look to try and find those successes so I can show those kind of numbers is there's secondary service pages that have nothing to do with that area that the physicians are really paying attention to, like the pay my bill section, or how do I find parking at the hospital, and where do I go from a wayfinding perspective? And these are areas that nobody else really truly has a large amount of stakeholder involvement with. There's a couple of units that write content for it, but they just write it and say, here it is. And I've got a lot more leeway on how I craft that and change it. So that's the section that I start to focus on and say, how do I make this better? And if I can show results here and show how I've improved these numbers here, I've got real data that I can go back to later for those harder things and say, we've done this in this section. Let's look at your section and just pick an area and let's play with it and see what we can do and if we can improve things. It's not a quick solution. Everything is going to take months, if not years, in most organizations to really get them to shift. That's it. Okay. Well,
I have a new appreciation.
that's not bad. It's still, we were only 7 minutes early. Yep.